law, language, money, the three paradigms of spontaneously grown institutions. Now, fortunately, law and language have been allowed to develop. Money has originated in original form, but as soon as it was there in its most primitive form, it was frozen. After 200 or 300 years of coins, all governments put their hands and stopped any further developments. Governments said it must not develop any further. We were not allowed to experiment on it. Money hasn't been improved. Money has rather become worse in the course of time. And what we have had since in development are matters of government inventions, mostly wrong, mostly abuses of money.
I have directed Secretary Connolly to suspend temporarily the convertibility of the dollar into gold or other reserve assets.
And I have come to the position of asking, has monetary policy ever done any good? I don't think it has. I think it has done only harm, and that's why I am now pleading for what I've called denationalization of money.
How do you think that it would work? Would the major banks such as Chase Manhattan issue currencies or gold coins issued, or how would it?
Well, the governments can stop people from issuing money. They can hardly stop them from opening accounts in something. After all, in the modern world, hand-to-hand money, coins and paper is no longer the most important. Credits and credit cards are a substitute. So I think we can forget about existing money and existing banks, and we'll gradually open a system of accounts which will displace money.
That's a fascinating concept. Maybe the unit one day will be known as the Hayek.
I don't believe that we shall ever have a good money again before we take the thing out of the hands of government. Then we can't take them violently out of the hands of government. All we can do is, by some sly roundabout way, introduce something they can't stop.
And with that, I welcome you back to another video here on the channel. I really loved that clip by Hayek. And Gigi, whose article or essay I'm gonna cover in this video, started his piece with the same clip. This is already the third time I'm covering one of Gigi's essays, and there's good reason for that. You can see this video as an additional extension of what Gigi wrote. It's not really a summary. I think it's rather stupid to summarize something which should be read in its entirety and is concise as it is. And since the essay has so much depth, I won't be able to cover my thoughts on it in a single video. So this will be a mini-series consisting of 3 videos with additional thoughts and connections I made while reading Gigi's once again brilliant essay, Inalienable Property Rights, the Law, Language, Money and Morality of Bitcoin. Let's start with a quote to kick things off. Money can be traded for goods and services. These goods and services are produced and offered by strangers. The stranger part is important, because money is the one thing that effectively and peacefully allows us to scale across trust barriers. With money, you don't need to trust your counterparty. That's the whole point. If the counterparty is a good friend of yours, you can rely on credit. Final settlement is what removes the trust barrier and allows societies to scale. The whole purpose of money is that you can redeem it for something else, anonymously and with final settlement. Again, final settlement means that the deal is done. You are not indebted to your trading partner anymore. With the exchange of money, the exchange is final. I think we can unpack an important concept here that Gigi did not venture into. When exchanging a good for money, the exchange is actually only really final for one side. It is only final for the person who received the good. The person who received the money is still in pretty much a credit relationship with everyone else. Because money itself doesn't do anything unless it can be exchanged for a good or service in the future, meaning others need to be willing to accept it. This is explained well in Vom Gelde by Argentarius. In economic transactions, one service is always exchanged for another. However, only the one service takes place in the present, the other takes place in the future. Until this future point in time, a credit relationship exists, namely a claim of one party to the outstanding consideration of the other party. This claim is secured by a transfer instrument called money. Only one thing matters, and that is that the money perfectly fulfills its task of securing a claim to goods. Gigi continues by describing that the flow of money is of utter importance, which can already be concluded by the fact that it's a necessity to scale beyond the Dunbar's number. Without money, the maximum group size to cooperate in is limited to 150 people. If we want to live in a free, peaceful and prosperous society, we must not interfere with the issues and control of money. After all, as Frédéric Bastiat famously said, when goods do not cross borders, soldiers will. Speaking of Frédéric Bastiat, in his book The Law, which I can highly recommend just as much as Vom Gelde by Argentarius, he has a quote that really stuck with me. In my eyes, this quote represents everything that Bitcoin faces in the regulatory environment. No society can exist unless the laws are respected to a certain degree. The safest way to make laws respected is to make them respectable. When law and morality contradict each other, the citizen has the cruel alternative of either losing his moral sense or losing his respect for the law. So much for the law. Now for the language. I've compared Bitcoin to a language in several videos and from many different perspectives. Bitcoin is a protocol for communicating value. Bitcoin is pure information, which can be represented in any language you'd like. And Bitcoin is code, which is protected under the First Amendment. Communication does not lose constitutional protection as speech simply because it is expressed in the language of computer code. In fact, Bitcoin is free speech money. Neither me nor Gigi need to prove the point that freedom of speech is essential for a free society. But freedom of speech is not the perfect wording. We should rebrand it into freedom after speech. Idi Amin, a de facto Ugandan military dictator from the 70s, proved it. There is freedom of speech, but I cannot guarantee freedom after speech. Well, this video feels like a concatenation of quotes at this point, but what can I say? The discussion of law, language and money is not a new one, so there are a lot of people who said it better than I can, and probably then Gigi can too. Freedom of speech alone does not suffice for a free society. There are other special ingredients, like property rights. The fact that physical things are scarce and can be stolen or destroyed is what brings property rights into existence in the first place. Property rights are a solution to the potential conflict of who can use which scarce resource. How is this protection achieved? By the prospect of violence, through the state, mafia, an individual, or whomever. The law exists because property can be violated, not vice versa. What does that have to do with Bitcoin? Well, Bitcoin is very different, because as stated before, Bitcoin is pure information, and therefore not something physically scarce. Informational property can't even be stolen, it can only be shared. If I know something and you find out about it, you now have the information as well, but I did lose it. Consequently, Bitcoin does not create digital information that can't be copied. Such a thing can never exist. What Bitcoin does is it creates an infinite game that anyone can join, a game with certain limitations. I like the wording here, because it made me think of a third book I want to toss towards you, Finite and Infinite Games by James Carse. The main difference between the two is a finite game is played for the purpose of winning, an infinite game for the purpose of continuing the play. And what I like even more is that this somehow summarizes what Bitcoiners do. Finite players play within boundaries. Infinite players play with boundaries. While Bitcoin itself has limitations and rules, Satoshi changed the boundaries, limitations and rules of our monetary system, and Bitcoiners around the world continue to do so. Back to Gigi and property rights in the informational realm. He quotes Bernard Shaw to set up the big reveal of what Bitcoin solved. If you have an apple and I have an apple and we exchange these apples, then you and I will still each have one apple. But if you have an idea and I have an idea and we exchange these ideas, then each of us will have two ideas. This, ladies and gentlemen, is the double spending problem that digital cash faced, and Bitcoin solved it. Or did it? Passing on information is double spending said information, which coincidentally makes the idea of digital scarcity an oxymoron. Bitcoin does not solve this oxymoron, it circumvents it. The rules of the game make invalid information useless, not uncopyable. People have tried to change Bitcoin's rules and to game the system, and continuously try to do so. The latest Greenpeace meets Ripple founder campaign is exactly that. A campaign that wants to change Bitcoin's proof of work consensus mechanism into a proof of stake. This is an attack on the Bitcoin network. A more famous one is described in the Blocksize war, which I have extensively covered on the channel. The resolution of the Blocksize wars showed one thing clearly. In the end, individual users define, verify, and enforce the rules. The full node is sovereign, as are the users behind said nodes. This is what decentralization in the context of Bitcoin really boils down to. You want to bend the rules? Go ahead. But my node won't accept your rules. Your information is invalid and therefore useless. If you change the rules, you need to convince everyone that the new rules are better than the old ones. But that's not all. Bitcoin itself doesn't change with your new rules. What you created is a new Bitcoin game, a fork of the Bitcoin game, a new game that some people might play from now on. The original Bitcoin game does not stop existing though. It's infinite, as long as a single miner exists. Everyone is free to play by their own rules. Everyone is free to fork off. The game has a simple goal. to create an indisputable past in an ongoing fashion, and it goes something like this. Miners are rewarded with sats to create and protect the past. Nodes validate this past, creating the network that pays the miners. Users imbue sats with value. The fun thing is that you can play all three roles, miner, user and node, without anyone's permission, and you can enter and leave the game whenever you want. And this is where I want to end part 1 of the series. In the next one we talk about the strange loop of law, language and values in the context of Bitcoin. If you enjoyed the video and took something out of it, I would appreciate it if you leave a like and subscribe to the channel for further content. Of course, you should also read the original essay by Gigi, which you can find in the video description. That's it from my side, thank you for watching and I see you next time.